Okay, today we're going to learn about lesson 5.9, powers of products and quotients. Okay, for on this, what we were doing is what happens if we have more than one thing in the parentheses that's raised to a power. Each item in the parentheses, if they're multiplied, it's called a factor. And so we have 5 as a factor on this one, and we have 3 as a factor here. So I'd like to circle each of the factors so I know what is being raised to the 4th power. This 4 is on everything in the parentheses. So it has to go to the 5, and it also has to go to the 3. So when you're writing this down, I like to write each factor in parentheses to separate them. So we have 5 to the 4th times, parentheses, 3 to the 4th. Over here with the algebra one, 5ab to the m, a times b. So a is a factor and b is a factor. This m is going over both of them. So it would be a to the mth, sounds kind of funny, but it is, and b to the mth power. There we go. Over here, to try an example. So we have 3z to the 5th. This actually means 3 times z to the 5th. 3 is its own factor, and z to the 5th is its own factor. This 4 has to go over both of them. So when I write that down, I'm going to have 3 in parentheses to the 4th power times z to the 5th. They go together. That exponent cannot stand alone. You can't have an itty-bitty 5 all by itself. So that is attached to the z, and then that is raised to the 4th power. Now you follow the exponent rules that we've already learned. 3 to the 4th power means 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is going to be 81. Z to the 5th to the 4th, that's a power to a power, which means you're going to multiply those exponents. 5 times 4, that is going to be z to the 20th power. All right, let's try another one. Next one, negative 3a to the 4th. We have two different terms. Negative 3, those go together, and then we have an a. So each one is going to be raised to the 4th power. So give each factor its own parentheses. So we have negative 3 to the 4th power. Really important to make sure that negative's inside those parentheses. And then we have an a to the 4th power. So negative 3 to the 4th power is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 81. And then we have a to the 4th is just simply a to the 4th. Okay, for our next one. Looks very similar, but the difference is the negative is not inside the parentheses anymore. So that just stays on the outside. So we have out here then that negative stays there. It's not raised to any power. The power can only go over everything inside. So we still have 3 on the inside, and we have an a on the inside. Those are the two factors. So that means we have 3 in their own parentheses to the 4th, and we have a to the 4th. There's nothing to do with that negative, just keep it right there. So we have negative 3 to the 4th power, as we've discussed, is 81. And then a to the 4th is simply a to the 4th, and you're done. Okay, next one, let's see. Raising a quotient to a power. So here we have 2/3 to the 4th power. To raise a quotient to a power, raise both the numerator and the denominators to the power. So, because they're both inside the parentheses. So if we have 2/3 to the 4th, we're going to take a 2, that's a factor, and a 3. So that means we are going to have 2 to the 4th, gotta write it little, and over, then we have 3 to the 4th power. For our variables, for exponent 1, that means we have a is a factor, and so is b. So we have a to the m power over b to the m power. All right, let's try an example. Find the area of a square with a side length of x over 4. To find the area of a square, you go side times side, or length times length. So we're going to take this and multiply it by itself. So we're going to go x over 4. And that if it's multiplied by itself, that's the same thing as being raised to the 2nd power. So we need to do the numerator and the denominator to the 2nd power. So we're going to have then x to the second power over 4 to the second power. Okay, and if we go further, x to the second power simply gives us x squared over 4 to the second power gives us 16. Okay, pause the video because now I want you to try some of them on the lesson quiz. When you're done with the lesson quiz, then you can bring it right back and see if you get them right. Okay, I'm going to do each of the lesson quizzes a little bit below this. So here we go. For 12x squared, y, z, all of that to the second power. Holy cow. All right, so we're going to take 12 and x squared, that goes together, and y and z. There are 4 different factors with this one. All of those have to be raised to the second power. So let's do it down here a little bit. So that means we have 12 to the second power. We have x squared to the second power. We have y to the second power. And z to the second power. Oh, there we go. Okay, so 12 squared gives us 144. Oh, 144, there we go. X squared to the second power, power to a power, so you're going to multiply those. Make sure you're showing your work. And you get x to the fourth power. And y to the second power is simply y to the second power, and z to the second power is simply z to the second power. And there you go. That is your answer right there. Okay, for number 2 up here, we have -4, ab to the third. We have 3 different terms there. We have a -4, circle it. We have an a, circle it. B to the third goes together. And all of that is to the third power. So each one of these factors needs to be raised to the third power. So here we go, number 2. We have -4 in parentheses to the third power. We then have a to the third power and b to the third raised to the third power. There we go. So -4 to the third power means -4 times -4 times -4. It gives you -64. A to the third is simply a to the third. Then we have b to the third, power to a power. You've got to multiply those exponents. Make sure you're showing that work. So 3 times 3 is going to give us b to the 9th. And there you go. Number 3. We have a negative on the outside. That's just going to stay there. Then inside, we have -2. And we have g squared, and we have h. Oh, this is missing something. We need to have, it was cut off, a little squared right here. Otherwise, that doesn't make much sense. If you didn't do that before, that's okay. You can add it now, and then you can work through it with me. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3 different factors here. We have a -2, we have a g to the second power, and we have an h. I'm going to keep on the outside of that my negative, just to keep that in mind. So on number 3, we're going to keep that negative on the outside. Okay, keep that negative. Then we have -2 raised to the second power. -2 raised to the second power. We have a g squared raised to the second power. And we have an h, which is raised to the second power. Okay, -2 to the second power means -2 times -2. That gives me, keep that negative outside here, and this gives me a +4. But I still have that negative from the problem. Then we have g to the second power to the second. If power to a power, you multiply those exponents. G to the 2 times 2 is 4, and then h to the second is just h to the second. There is number 3. Number 4. Oh, come back up here. Okay, each term needs to be raised to the second power. So we have here each factor. We have u to the third, and then we have a 6. There we go. So, and both of those have to be raised to the second power. So number 4, showing work down here. So we have u to the third, whoops, forgot the third, and that is raised to the second power, over 6 to the second power. Okay, once again, you need to multiply those exponents, because power to a power, so that gives me u to the 6th power, over 6 to the second power, which is 6 to the second power, 6 times 6, which is 36. Remember, if you have a number as a base, you need to go further. There we go. And our last one, number 5. And number 5, we have, this is a floating 6. This 6 is, this 6 is actually supposed to be on this R. No idea why it's way so high. But we have a 3 here. We have a Q to the 8th. We have an R to the way up high 6. And we also have an S to the, what is that supposed to be to? To the 7th, right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different factors there. Those are all being raised to the 5th. So coming on down here, number 5. So that means we have 3, which is raised to the 5th power. And we also have Q to the 8th. Make sure that's all in parentheses. And that's all raised to the 5th power. And then we also have an R to the 6th. And that is raised to the 5th power. Over, on the bottom, we have an S to the 7th. That's an S out of 5. There we go. S, forgot my 7th again. S to the 7th. And that is also raised to the 5th power. There are my 1, 2, 3, 4 factors that were inside my parentheses. There we go. So each one of these has to be raised to the 5th power. So 3 to the 5th power is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Use your calculator, you get 243. Q time to the 8th to the 5th power, multiply those because it's a power to a power, and you get Q to the 40th. R to the 6th to the 5th, that's power to a power, multiply. You got R to the 30th. Over S to the 7th to the 5th, which means you need to multiply those. It's power to a power. 7 times 5 is 35. So you get S to the 35th. And right there is your answer. All right, awesome. If you got all those right, you can now start your homework.